Who were the kings that Moses defeated before he died? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Joshua on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Joshua 12, verses 1 to 6. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Joshua 12, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we're going to be reading from is the New King James Version. So Joshua chapter 12, beginning at verse 1. These are the kings of the land whom the children of Israel defeated, and whose land they possessed on the other side of the Jordan toward the rising of the sun, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon, and all the eastern Jordan plain. One king was Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon and ruled half of Gilead, from Aroer, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, from the middle of that river, even as far as the river Jabbok, which is the border of the Ammonites, and the eastern Jordan plain, from the Sea of Chinneroth as far as the Sea of Arabah, the Salt Sea, the road to Beth Jeshemoth, and the southward below the slopes of Pisgah. The other king was Og, king of Bashan, and his territory, who was of the remnant of the giants who dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei, and reigned over Mount Hermon, over Salcah, over all Bashan, as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and over half of Gilead to the border of Sihon, king of Heshbon. These Moses the servant of the Lord and the children of Israel had conquered, and Moses the servant of the Lord had given it as a possession to the Reubenites, to the Gadites, and half tribe of Manasseh. Chapter 12 is a transition chapter in the book of Joshua. What is being described here is the battles that Israel had won in the land that they possessed up until the events at the end of chapter 11. Remember, chapters and verses were placed in later by man, and so that this would be placed right after discussing the conquering of northern Canaan and right before the record of how the land was divided up makes perfect sense. Verses 1 to 6 tell us again about the battles that Israel won before crossing over the Jordan River. We studied that in Numbers 21, verses 21 to 26 and 33 to 35. And if we go back there, we find that reads, Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, Let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into fields or vineyards. We will not drink water from wells. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory. But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel in the wilderness, and he came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. Then Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the people of Ammon, for the border of the people of Ammon was fortified. So Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all these cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and in all its villages. For Heshbon was a city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and had taken all his land from his hand as far as the Arnon. Skipping down to verse 33. And they turned and went up by the way of Bashan. So Og, king of Bashan, went out against him, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. Then the Lord said to Moses, Do not fear him, for I have delivered him into your hand, with all his people and his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So they defeated him, his sons, and all his people, until there was no survivor left him, and they took possession of his land. Up on your screen now is a map of the two battles that took place with Sihon and Og. Sihon was king of Heshbon, a city not too far from the plains of Moab, where Israel stayed while waiting to cross the Jordan River. But the land which Sihon controlled was much more than simply Heshbon. Sihon ruled all the way south to the Arnon River, the border with Moab, up to the river Jabbok, the river which is on the eastern end and helps delineate the eastern border with Ammon. Sihon's land also reached as far as the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea, to the west, and included the plains of Moab. By defeating Sihon, Israel gained this land. But Israel didn't stop with Sihon's land. They continued further north and conquered Og of Bashan at Edrei. On our wider map now, we see the land that Og controlled. His land began where Sihon's ended in Gilead, and stretched as far north as Mount Hermon. When Israel defeated Og, they gained control of this land. Most of it is called the Golan Heights today, and some of it is where Jesus did his teaching, including the feeding of the 5,000 in Matthew 14, and where Peter's confession of Jesus as the Son of God took place in Matthew 16. Of course, the inclusion of these battles here in Joshua weren't simply to recount what occurred in the book of Numbers and retold to us in the book of Deuteronomy. It was to provide us the reason that Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh received land on this side of the Jordan, and how far that land extended. The Lord willing, in the next lesson, we're going to see the exploits of Joshua, a precursor to the beginning of the dividing up of the land on the west side of the Jordan. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Joshua chapter 12, verses 7 to 24, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.